Welcome to On Point with Holly Richardson, that's me, Holly on the Hill, and Michelle Mumford, who's the Assistant Dean of the BYU Law School, and we are hosted by Sutherland Institute. Thanks for joining us today. So Michelle,
Yes,
we have a few more days until the 2014 primary in Utah.
that's right.
Do you want to talk about, there's not a whole lot of primary races going on, but in Salt Lake County where you live, there are a few interesting ones.
There's some district council, Salt Lake County Council. There was interesting fundraising news came out yesterday about Amy Winder Newton. The headline was the surprise of the fundraising, and I think the surprise wasn't necessarily that she has raised more than her opponent, Trent Snarr,
Right.
but
Dan
Dan Snarr, but that he has raised zero so far. And I think that is a surprising number for anybody. He mentioned that he was waiting until September, until he would ramp it up, but that he had family concerns right now. And I think Amy is just really pleased with her success. And
I think if you're sitting where Amy's sitting, you're going, I wonder if he's really going to actually make a race out of this. 'Cause
Right.
He might not. He might choose to just say, look, I've got family health issues and we just can't do it this time.
Right. And her experience coming in as an incumbent, she's been, very involved in county
everywhere.
activities. She is everywhere, and she's doing a great job. And
Yeah.
and she's taking a very bipartisan approach to it,
Yeah.
which in Salt Lake County is almost necessary to be successful. And so, can we not hear you, Holly? I can hear you. So yeah, I think she's excited about. It's easy to then start to be complacent. Oh, my opponent isn't taking this seriously. I don't think that she would be apt to do that. You want me to help you out?
Yeah.
I don't have a tech degree.
Technically impaired.
But
oh my gosh.
There you go. Yeah, I don't think she's going to take it for granted. I think she's going to keep going full steam.
So actually, one of the things we were going to talk about is Eric Cantor. And speaking of taking for granted, we'll come back to some more primaries. I want to talk about your assessor's race, but Eric Cantor lost his primary in Virginia, and he lost it to a guy named Brat, which, can you have a better political name, right? Maybe Anthony Weiner, right?
Yeah.
But he lost his race, and he lost it big.
Yes.
So
and it's the surprise of the century, and all of these adjectives.
Well, it really is. I think in a lot of ways, because they had a lot of different polling from different organizations that had him up. It wasn't just his own internal polling, right? Which you can kind of point to and say, oh gosh, did you get it wrong because you're so biased?
Right.
But what was interesting to me is, and I did do a blog post on this, but the consistent message was it was not immigration, it was not his immigration stance, that they actually had polled voters that day, and 70% of them agreed with Eric Cantor's stance on immigration.
Right. In his state.
In his district,
right.
Not just his state, but in his own district. But the overwhelming message that I think is the takeaway, and I'm armchair quarterbacking, right?
Right.
But is that he got disconnected from his base, and he took it for granted.
Politics is local.
He was so certain that he was going to be the next Speaker of the House that he was campaigning to be the Speaker of the House.
Right.
He was not even in his own district the morning of the election.
Right.
He was in D.C.
having lunches and breakfasts and with
Yep.
lobbyists.
Yeah,
and
that's
he's
right.
known as K Street.
That's right. And so he had, the feedback that came back, and certainly what I saw online was a discontent from his base that said, we try to get a hold of you, you won't come. We call your office, we don't get an answer, we get blown off. We show up in D.C. at the Capitol, you don't have time for us.
Right.
Right.
These are constituents.
That's right.
This is who you're
That's
serving
right.
and who votes.
That's right. And I think that's what happened in Utah. We've seen it a couple of times. I think that's what happened with Chris Cannon, and I think Jason Chaffetz was a great candidate, but I think Chris Cannon had finally built up enough animosity among his base because he was not responsive. For being ignored, right? When I personally had the experience of trying to call his office and call his office and call his office and call his office, and I cannot get a single answer, right? Then I started having state legislators call and nothing. Right? Zero response.
Right.
Same thing with Bob Bennett. You start to take your base for granted and say, oh yeah, fine, I'll be fine.
Right.
I'll just cruise to victory.
Right.
And it'll bite you.
And Senator Hatch took it seriously.
He did.
He was here from the
And so-
beginning of that.
And
from
so
the
did
beginning
Mitch
of his cycle.
McConnell this
Yes.
year, right? This cycle, and he was another one. We're going to take him down. Well, no, you didn't, right?
Right.
Because he took it seriously and he was out talking with the base.
Right. But then the national media uses it as a way, they say, oh, well, the Tea Party, even our own media here was saying an extreme Tea Party candidate beat out. I just want to kick against that because there were no national Tea Party organizations that were backing Brat before
he
he
had
won.
some big ones. Yeah, there were.
Yeah,
there were.
He wasn't. No, I'm going to disagree. I don't think he was coming out as a Tea Party. He was coming out as, and this is what we've talked about before, as how do women win. He was coming out with policy.
Yeah.
He was saying, these are our principles, and this is the policy that goes along with our principle. And that's what wins votes, and that's what people want to hear, and that's what they relate to.
Yeah, and I think that the Tea Party label is, I don't know if he's a Tea Party candidate or not. I do know that those
Who knows
organizations
what is a
did,
Tea Party
well,
anymore?
exactly, but organizations that lean that way did back him. But they've backed a lot of people this primary cycle, and
Right.
they have an abysmal record this cycle. But I think what,
Don't
people,
tell Ben Sass that.
I know, but people want to, jump up and down and say, oh, look, the Tea Party's not dead. Okay, but the fact is, when you have somebody who can go out and reach people where they are and talk to them about the issues that they care about and connect,
Right.
that wins elections.
Well, and I guess this is my point. When the Tea Party started so many years ago, it was about coming back to the people and
right.
saying less government,
Yeah.
stop spending,
Yeah.
and more accountability.
Right.
And now the Tea Party is who knows what. It's this amorphous bunch of different groups, and it's used to kind of disparage somebody just by even saying the name. I reject that.
I think there's a scorched earth policy sometimes
Yes.
too among people who claim that label and say it's an all or nothing, right?
Yes.
And I think that's problematic, and I think that's one of the issues.
The loud people
Well,
get
and
the,
it's not,
get the
again, it's not just
headlines.
loud, but it's scorched earth. It's the all or nothing. I will have it all right now, or I will burn this town to the ground.
Whereas 10 years ago, those that identified with the Tea Party.
Yeah, it's taxed enough already. We've got to pull back. And here we have this thing. in fact, I saw an interesting graph today. So we talk about how Congress's approval rating has gone down so much, and it's single digits.
Yeah.
And they said, it's not just Congress. It's organized religion.
Right.
It's the Supreme Court. It's the local courts. It's our police force.
Right.
Right? There are so many different things where we've become a cynical,
Right.
untrusting, angry society.
We've had professors at BYU do research on the Supreme Court, mentioning of Supreme Court in the news. And it is amazing how it has started, just to be the Supreme Court, as opposed to now Republican appointed justice, Democrat appointed justice, liberal leaning, it's very
leaning,
partisan.
yep.
It's
Yeah,
a
it's
very
very-
partisan whenever we talk about them now. They're no longer our American institution of the high court.
Right.
They're partisan just like the rest of it.
Right.
Boy, you're making me cynical. I'm already cynical.
But see, that's, I mean,
How do we
that's-
get out of that?
That's a good question. Actually, Representative Jeremy Peterson just did a blog post on
Right.
how do you get out of that. And it's not comfortable. It's painful.
It's local.
It's local
and small,
but,
and then-
but it's real. I mean, it's real effort and real cuts, and it's the getting past the cynicism. Just saying, there's a lot more things that have to happen
Right.
for that.
Well, like in
for that
immigration, do you think it is more of a piecemeal thing? Is that how
Yeah.
we need to start
I've
approaching most issues?
thought that, right? I've always thought that, and,
Little
and,
by
I-
little.
and that was one of the issues that hurt me in my own campaign. But I'm not going to go out there and say we can get it all in one fell swoop. We're
Right.
not going to.
Right.
But a lot of those policies, I think they are piecemeal, and not that that's a bad thing. It's that you take one small fraction and you say, okay, we can go forward in this direction this way because we know you've got 85% agreement on this issue right here. Okay,
Right.
let's take care of this issue, and then you can build from there because that's the looking for win-win. It's finding common ground and say how can you move forward. But it's nationally and locally,
Right.
It has everything to do with immigration policy and public land policy and
Right.
education policy
Right.
and all of those. They all can be looked at and say, okay, look, we have this long-term goal, but are there small steps that we can take to get there? And I think the answer is almost always yes.
So who are the leaders that can lead that out?
I have no idea.
I mean, speaking of land issues,
Maybe she hasn't been
yesterday-
born yet. I don't know.
That's a long time away then. Maybe she has been born, but she's not ready yet.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yesterday, the land issues came up again during interim day,
Yeah.
and you know, the issues with the shooting in Nevada,
Yeah.
and Utah emphasis that we don't want that to happen here.
Yeah.
Let's make sure
So
we
here's
forestall that.
well here's so that's not really an interim issue as much, but here's one of the things I think on that shooting in Nevada. So we had a couple of people who decided that they were going to take out some cops.
Right.
That was their goal.
Extremists.
Right, so these extremists were down on the Clive and Bundy Ranch. They were trying to find followers for their cause. They were asked to leave.
got
They did
kicked out,
leave.
right.
But they espouse the same type of mentality that I'm afraid I hear more and more and more of. If we don't get the federal government to comply, we'll just kill you.
Right.
Right? We'll have an armed insurrection. It will be the new American Revolution because I
Right.
care about my country. I will go to arms. You
Right,
know, I'll take up
right.
arms in its defense.
Right.
That can unfortunately translate to what I think happened in Las Vegas, right? So you've got to have a mix. And that's the thing I think sometimes people think it's a this or it's a this. It's not, it's a continuum, right? So you can be limited government without being anarchist. You can be, let's take our public lands back and have the state manage them and all those things without saying, I'm going to go shoot anybody who tries to come, you know, and enforce federal law on our land.
Right.
But that issue with the federal law and the grazing was brought up yesterday in the interim committee in natural resources.
And land issue is still a big deal here in Utah.
And it will be,
so
I think, forever.
Start to
There's
piecemeal that
actually a lot of
without
things. There's actually a lot of things that are
encouraging
underway.
extremists.
Well, I think there's a lot of things that are underway. So yesterday, when they talked about the BLM and the Clive Bundy situation and the cows on the ranch, and one of the things Spencer Cox said, our lieutenant governor, was that you do not need 2 helicopters to herd 5 cows. Right. You just don't.
You don't need it.
That's an unnecessary waste of resources. Right. And you don't need to send in. Well, I understand from the BLM side that they felt like they were walking into an ambush. That's why they came in, you know, prepared for conflict, and that's why they decided to stand down, because they didn't want to start a conflict that big. But the other issue is you say, okay, so how can we work together? And there's always ongoing effort to say, we've got these roads, right? RS 2477 roads.
Yes.
One of the presentations in the interim committee yesterday was just a little video clip of one of the state agencies is going around. She's over public lands, and they're going
Kathleen
around.
Clark?
Yeah, Kathleen Clark. Yeah,
She's great.
She's going around and she's videotaping these roads. And some of them, like I saw a clip, and I'm like, I would never drive on that road in a million years, because it's barely wide enough for this, you know, little small vehicle. It's a dirt road and a cliff.
Right.
It's like, I don't want to drive on that.
Right.
You can drive on that.
Right.
But it's those efforts, and then there's things like Rob Bishop in D.C. who's working on the Public Lands Initiative, and saying, you know, look, we've got some things that we know that we can do. We know that we've got agreement. It's Jason Chaffetz saying, I've got 23,000 acres that the Clinton administration said this was surplus land. We don't need it anymore, and let's turn that back over to the states. Those are small steps that still push us down the road, the direction that we're trying to go.
Right. I just don't want one of those extremist incidents.
I don't either.
Here.
I don't either.
Because it'll set back the whole.
I don't want to.
It always sets back the entire.
I don't want to stand
forward
off.
That we've had.
And look, I just did. I just spent 6 weeks or so doing Citizens Academy with our local police department.
Right.
And it was eye-opening to me to the risk, the level of risk that they put themselves at every day. I have now a new perspective of why they feel like they need to escalate sometimes, right? When you go in and you have sniper rifles trained on you, are you really honestly supposed to say, hey, can we just talk this out?
Right.
Right? I mean, they kept emphasizing, we want to go home to our families, right? We want to solve this in the least confrontational way possible, but we want to go home at the end of the day.
Of course. And that's interesting, because there was just a large seminar on the Fourth Amendment and these types of Fourth Amendment issues just this week, a couple days ago, put on by the ACLU and Libertas. And so there was kind of, you know, I was going to say conservative.
Interesting
more
collaboration.
Libertarian.
Very libertarian.
Libertarian, ACLU. And the agreement, obviously, was that the federal government, well, not obviously, the agreement between, you know,
the two,
everyone was the federal government stinks and it should be done on the local level. But I don't know if that solves our problems, because you do have these varying interests of how do you go in and protect the police? How do the police go in and protect themselves while making sure that they're not infringing on our rights?
Right.
You know, the no-knock warrants, going in the middle of the night, all of that stuff.
And I even asked, about no-knock warrants, and some of them have said, look, if you had a situation where the guy was a known felon, and this was not their first offense, right? If they're a known felon, that they had already threatened, the next time you come for me, I'm taking you out. Right? Would you stand there and knock at the door and say, hello, is anybody home? Can I come in? Right? I mean, and I understand that it's different. So is there a balance? Absolutely.
Right.
There's a balance. It's always a struggle to find out where that is.
And then you have the unfortunate incidents of shootings.
But
Daniel Willard.
you know what it reminds me of? There's this escalation, and it's happening. I feel like it's happening nationwide. There's this escalation and this conflict between law enforcement and everybody else, and it just continues to escalate. But it's like the late '60s and early '70s, right, where it was people were proud to be cop killers. Cops were pigs.
Right.
When I was young in the '70s. It was, I just remember that being part of the culture, is that you were taught not to trust a police officer. You were taught not to trust an authority figure. It was, in fact, my dad served in Vietnam as an Air Force pilot.
Right.
He flew over there, and he came home to people jeering, spitting, right? Treating him, terribly. Yeah, my mom was just horrified. Here her husband was in a war zone. She didn't know if he was going to come back. She had 2 little kids, pregnant with her third, and she has all of this negative messaging about how awful it was that he was a soldier,
right,
or in the Air Force. But I feel like we're getting to that level again. So what's the resolution point? I don't know, but it's not always.
No, and there are things you can do on the Fourth Amendment issues. I mean, police can wear cameras, multiple cameras. It protects themselves as much as it protects, public. Things like that.
But then you have, I
know.
Yeah, really? Well, we could put cameras on all of our cars, but, do we really want to do that, right? We already have geo-tracking because we all carry smartphones.
Yes. Don't track me, NSA.
I know.
Which brings up these emails, these lost learner emails that the NSA should be able to pull up to recover us.
So, so free-ranging today. We knew it would be. So Lois Lerner, she's formerly of the IRS, right?
Yes.
She's under investigation because of some targeting of conservative groups right before the election,
right?
The last presidential election.
501c4 applications that sat around for years and years.
That there was some real political, partisan targeting going on with the IRS. Yeah. So now that they finally have shown that, yes, that actually was happening, they want the proof. Well, it's all gone. We just deleted those emails. We lost our emails. The dog ate them.
They didn't say we deleted them.
They said we lost them.
Yes.
We lost the emails. And by the way, we
my
rewrote the hard drive. And my
it
sounds familiar. Have we not
drive.
heard this story before?
We have. Where have we heard this same story?
So yes, I wonder if they've had any laptops or hard drives left in cabs
on
in
airplanes.
DC or in
But we have solutions for this. So we have a Utah solution.
Yes, we do. We have a Utah solution.
IRS issues.
Yep, they just need to call our investigators.
Yes.
Yep, they need to call our investigators, and they have some really awesome forensic abilities to
recover. I haven't seen one IT person say that this is even possible. Every IT thing that I have seen has said this is impossible. There's no way. There's not a backup on a backup on a backup of a server or this, and I'm not an IT person, but maybe they should start using Gmail.
Here's one of the issues with Mr. Swallow. At the end of the day, we're not to the end of the day, but at the end of the email investigation, they found out he was an Apple guy, and everything from Apple's stored on the cloud.
Right.
And it's still there. And they ended up with over 10,000 different documents.
Right.
In spite of all the missing devices.
Right.
So is there something like that? I don't know. Are there multiple backups? Of course there are. To the IRS, are you kidding me? Of course there are.
Yeah.
Right? But if you back up, if you say take this hard drive and you repurpose it and you give it to somebody else, is it still there? The answer is yes, it actually is still mostly recoverable.
Right.
So the process of actually wiping a hard drive to the point where you can't recover it is pretty involved. It can happen. It does happen, but most people wouldn't know how to do it, and certainly not somebody who's just...
Maybe they hired, what's his name, to do it. I forget his name. The campaign advisor that is
Jason
business.
Powers.
Yes, maybe they hired Jason Powers to wipe their...
So, no, that didn't work out that great.
You know, who is the person that gives the kind of directive to say, tell them all the emails are lost? You know, who is that person? Where's the accountability? When are the people going to start to say, we've had enough here?
Well, is there enough with Benghazi?
Enough.
Right?
There is enough.
So, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot. I don't think it's been a really great few weeks for President Obama. I mean, I think it's just, not presidentially, but it's not, look, worldwide, it's not going that great right now, right? I mean, the stuff that's going on over
ISIS in Iraq.
Yeah, ISIS in Iraq. It's so disturbing,
yes.
right? It's the mass execution now that you've got going on. I mean, I don't know, where's the tipping point in between, that's genocide. Like, when stuff like that goes on, that's the point where I say I want America to intervene.
Right.
Right.
But America today isn't what America was before. America today is, okay, world community, what should we do instead of leading out?
Well, Obama actually has had a policy, and they literally wrote it down, and they started writing about it, I think, in March or April in the New York Times, and I think Washington Post potentially. His foreign policy, literally written down, is don't do stupid stuff, right? Except that stuff was spelled a little bit differently.
Right.
But don't do stupid stuff, right? It's like, just don't mess up too bad. And it's just one mess up after another. And look, people can look at our clip today and say, yes, but what's the solution? Well, we have lots of solutions, right? Speak softly and carry a big stick. You don't disarm more than your enemies, because you then show your enemies that you're weak and you can be taken advantage of. You don't appease.
Right. Negotiate.
You can negotiate. I mean, I think there's
With
a time.
terrorists?
No, but I think there's a time where it is appropriate. I think negotiation and compromise is appropriate, but you don't say 25,000 times, you can't do that. I mean it. Really don't do that.
Right.
I really mean it this time.
Right.
You just can't continue to say, I really would prefer that you not go execute all those people and videotape it and put it on YouTube, because that's kind of not cool.
Okay.
Okay. So are we a little opinionated? Yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
Okay, let's go back to the primaries.
Yeah.
So county assessor race, I want to know, what do you think in Utah? I mean, Salt Lake County.
Jake Parkinson versus...
Yes, his opponent.
Did I just show my hand? I did not. Incumbent really has a
in a race like that, though, be honest, do they have really any name recognition or any idea?
And
He's
Parkinson's
never been on
run
a ballot
great
before.
Campaign. No, he doesn't. The incumbent doesn't. Hasn't been on a ballot before. Parkinson's been running a great campaign. He's been doing it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested. I've already voted. I'm a vote by mail girl.
Wow.
So
Davis County is exclusively vote by mail this year.
I saw that. A lot of counties are trying, and they're not exclusive, but yes.
Yeah, Davis County is exclusive, and it's interesting because, especially as you shift that first time,
yes,
you don't really know who your voters are going to be. You don't know if you're going to have, like, the people who would normally go to the polls just forget to stick the ballot in the mail.
Right.
Right.
It changes the whole management style of the campaign and where the numbers are and the data. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, Utah County, we've got a couple, and we have a county commissioner race with Bill Lee and Lauren Gerson, they're both down there. And again, my question, just from a political campaign consultant point of view, is how do you get your message out when you have no money? Neither one of them has very much money. They have some emails, but it's not, those emails can't possibly get the majority of the primary voters.
Right.
And the race is like, most people are like, I don't even know. What is there a race?
Right.
Because there's no high ticket items on a primary.
Right. It's the apathy problem of a primary.
Yeah. I wonder if we'll hit double digits.
I'm interested to see Davis County's numbers to see if that helps.
Good. Yeah. Davis might
There's also a big attorney race down in St. George, county attorney.
Oh, tell me about that.
There's an incumbent that is getting a real run for his money for different reasons. I'm not familiar with them, but
So he's got a big race.
He has a big.
We have a county attorney race in Utah County as well, and it's been kind of a dirty race, an ugly race, I should say. Yeah, so a few interesting ones. I know
Yes.
there's some county commissioners, county commission races in other places. Uinta County has one. Mike McKee has been up there for a really long time.
That's right.
He's got a primary challenge this time. In Davis County, now I just lost it. Brett Milburn is in a primary this time as well. He's an incumbent.
Well, and there's a primary for some seats that were open up there as well, between Dan Duell and Justin Fosson.
That's
who
right.
was
So
recently
Justin
appointed.
so Justin is the current.
Right.
That was Ryan Wilcox's seat. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah. So that'll be all
After Senator
shaken
Lee
out.
coached all of the legislators.
I know he did. Yeah, he did. So
Good.
anyway, so anything else? What else should we wrap up with?
I think we hit quite a number of subjects today.
We could talk water policy and air quality. No, it's been pretty good lately.
The energy, the
Well, I do have a new job.
Yes.
Right, I do have a new job. I'm working for the Utah Office of Energy Development. I'm doing communications. It's a lot of fun. I'm learning a lot.
Yeah.
But it's that's something that's been
What would you
pretty
say
interesting.
is the most interesting or surprising energy policy related, or something that the public would be really surprised about? I heard you mention something that it's, the
It's an economic
salaries in
driver.
this, are double other salaries.
Yeah.
What's really
So
surprising?
within the energy sector, and they're looking just at the number specifically of energy-related jobs and production, not the ancillary stuff. So not the additional construction, with new houses up in
Right.
the Una Basin, just with energy. It's a $5 billion input to the state every year. It's $700 million in taxes. We've
Wow.
got about 70 million direct SITLA funds that go to education. But the energy sector is paying about $1.5 billion in wages to about 18,000 workers, and it's about double the state wage,
Wow.
the state average. So it's a sector that pays really well.
And how much does the national policy affect? I mean, does
It affects, there's no question. So the new EPA proposed
The coal.
regulations that came out, yeah, it will definitely impact. So here's the thing, Utah produces 80% of the electricity we produce in Utah is generated from coal. So the people who drive the electric vehicles and say, I'm protecting the environment, it's great, they're low emission,
Right.
but the electricity comes from coal.
Right.
So let's be honest about where the source comes from. But we also have these really exciting alternate fuels as well that are coming. In fact, there was just a big deal signed today where First Wind will be selling power generated from their solar panels to Rocky Mountain Power for redistribution. So we have some great solar arrays that are going in and are already in place.
Right.
One of the most interesting for me was that there's a great geothermal plant really close to Cove Fort.
Oh, wow.
Right? It's like I want to go take a field trip. I want to go see it.
Yes.
Because they have this geothermal anomaly. And you have these really superheated rocks, but above the rocks you have brine. You just have really hot, salty water. And they have figured out a system to pump it up, to use it to capture the energy and re-inject it into the earth without disturbing the heat. And it's just a perpetual cycle that's very cool, I think.
And in that area, isn't there already infrastructure there? Like, there's...
It came in. So do you remember Razor Technology?
Yeah.
It was an idea that went bust and didn't work out. This is actually a functional power plant now. It's run by Enel Green Power, which is a European company that came in. They built it. It's running. It's operational, and it's putting out power. And I think it's awesome.
Great.
So wind is another thing. We've also got biodiesel. We have Washakie Renewables that's trying to do stuff with leftover cooking oil,
Right.
from fast food restaurants, which is cool. It doesn't have a huge impact. I mean, oil, gas, and coal are still our major drivers, and coal is the biggest driver of our electric power that's generated. But we have some great things coming up too. In fact, I just saw nationally we've now matched the same level of production we had in the early 1970s, which was considered the peak because of shale oil nationwide. And we are now producing, I want to say, like 11 million barrels a day in the U.S. So there's some great things for energy independence and responsible development, and very little environmental disturbance.
Congratulations on
Thanks.
your new... That's fun. It's good to have new positions.
So And you've got a new position coming up in
I do.
a couple of months.
I'll be home for a little while for number 7.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Doing what we can to help
Okay,
Utah
does she
and our
look like she's
population
having her 7th
numbers.
baby? So,
yeah.
well, thanks for joining us. It's
Good to be here.
Good to be here together again.
We'll have more guests next time.
We'll be a little smoother next time. Join us again for On Point.